I get asked the question a lot, which half-ton would you buy if you had to buy one right now? So this is my opinion on just the most reliable powertrain being made right now. I'm not going to be talking about reliable electronics or anything else. This is just, if I was forced to buy one of these new half-ton turbocharged vehicles, I'm going to rank all of the half-ton trucks for you, at least in my opinion right now. I think the comments are going to get a little spicy. People will probably disagree with me, but let's dive in and I'll tell you my reasoning behind each engine choice and transmission choice, and really who the overall powertrain winner is, at least currently as it stands October of 2025. Let's dive in. And here's how I'm determining, at least in my opinion, what a reliable powertrain is. So I looked at NHTSA data, the complaint data, versus how many trucks were sold for 2024. And then I also, just sort of in my head, have aggregated what I see in Facebook groups and forums for all of these vehicles and different powertrains. And I have come up with what I think is a pretty good representation of just if you're going to have problems or not with a powertrain with certain configuration. Here's how I'm going to rank these. Coming up, tied for, we'll just say second and first place here, because I'm going to group the Tundra with the GM Sierra and the Silverado, and then I'll tell you why I think Ford and Ram are more towards the top of the list in this powertrain discussion. As most people know, the Tundra has been in the news for many issues with this twin-turbo V6. They've had a recall on it. They should probably recall more, and they are still having occasionally 2025s fail with the same main bearing failure. I just can't in good conscience tell someone that the powertrain in this is dead reliable. It just isn't. And based on the numbers, the Tundra has 133 complaints for 2024 on NHTSA's website. They're at about a 0.08% complaint rate, and they have that one major issue with their engine. So I think their powertrain still needs issues worked out. They have other issues as well, but overall they would probably be a decently reliable truck if they can get their powertrain squared away, but that's where they stand. Now, what about the Sierra or the Silverado? They really only have two powertrains that would interest me. One is the TurboMax. I think it's more reliable than the V8s right now. The V8s have plenty of problems with their 6.2-liter recall. They've got DFM issues. I just wouldn't recommend a V8. They also have transmission issues. Quite a high failure rate in the valve body on the GMs. You'd really, if you bought a GM, you'd need to upgrade the valve body, in my opinion, immediately, or at least when you start seeing bad symptoms. So for me, I would be looking at the 3-liter Duramax or the TurboMax engine. That's probably all I'd look at, and then you're kind of into fixing the transmission valve body. I think Toyota's got a better transmission, but they only have one engine option, and it's not something I'd recommend. GM, you could potentially make them sort of reliable. General Motors, they have 372 complaints with 573,000 sales for GM. That is a 0.07% complaint rate to how many vehicles were sold between the Sierra and the Silverado. So just slightly fewer complaints per vehicle sold than the Tundra. Now, next up would be the F-150. I rank the Ram a little bit higher than the F-150 for powertrain reliability, at least in my opinion, but I think Ford is actually right up there. Ford didn't have the valve body issues with some of their transmissions. I'd probably put the F-150 with the 2.7 even a little bit further ahead of Ram right now, just because of its longevity on the market. So if I were recommending a Ford F-150, I would say the 2.7 liter from Ford is probably their most reliable. It's been out a long time. The 3.5's getting a little bit better. They've fixed some cam phaser issues, supposedly. But I think the 3.5 is just more complex. The 2.7, it's been kind of a tank for a long time, and it's still got twin turbos, so I'm not super excited about that. But overall, it's been pretty reliable. And believe it or not, Ford has sold 460,915 F-150s. That's an estimate based on the data that they provide. They lump F-Series together. Their complaints, they have 86 complaints on NHTSA for 2024. So Ford has actually the lowest complaints per vehicle sold, 0.018%, which is lower than Tundra, lower than GM, and slightly lower than Ram. It's almost the same as Ram. And honestly, with the Ford, the only thing that worries me is that 10-speed. Same thing with GM. They do tend to have valve body parts in stock, so if you have a problem under warranty, they generally get you back on the road faster, but it's still the same kind of problematic valve body. You can upgrade it just like GM, but that kind of is a failure point or a problem point. However, it's all a numbers game. You see how many they sell, you see how many people have problems. I do think they're a little bit better than General Motors in the transmission area, at least right now. All right, now next up is the Ram. Now Ram lumps all of their numbers together, so you got the 2500, 1500, all their sales numbers lumped together for 2024. Ram is at about 43 complaints for the 1500 and 27 complaints for the 2500. So Ram has 283,702 sales. That's combining 2500 and 1500. They've got about 70 complaints, so a 0.02% complaint ratio on NHTSA's website. So 0 recalls for their powertrains. That's a big one. They don't have engines really failing or maybe design issues that we see in, say, the Tundra, but we also see a ZF transmission in the Ram. So I really like the ZF transmissions, the 8 speeds, and especially in, say, the RHO, the high output, or the standard output version of the Hurricane. So far, I think Ram's powertrain has been the most reliable. Now, they do have all these electronic issues with their new platform. They've got a bunch of people in the forums talking about, things on their dash that are problematic. They've got oil sensors. They've got all sorts of gremlins, they call them, in the electrical world. But overall, their powertrains actually seem to be right up there, maybe a little bit better than everybody else, except for maybe Ford's 2.7. I just give the edge to Ram because they've got the ZF transmission mated to an engine that hasn't really had problems yet. And I'll tell you one thing that I do like about the inline 6 design. So if you look here, we have a lot of main bearings in an inline 6 design. So I do think a lot of these V6 engines, you suffer from putting more load on fewer main bearings. So you have to have either larger bearings or you just have to put more stress on them. I do like that design of an inline 6 engine, just being able to distribute that power and torque out over more bearings. I think it's going to be more reliable over the long term. Time will tell, obviously, but so far, the RHO, the standard output version of these, everything I see in the forums and Facebook groups, anywhere else, it's been fairly reliable and it seems like a pretty stout powertrain. They do have some catalytic converter. They have some issues with thermostat problems early on in the Hurricane engine, but other than that, they haven't been having, spun main bearings and spun rod bearings and things like that. So that's a good sign. So let me know what you guys think. Do you think I'm crazy? Now, of course, this is in a scenario where I'm imagining I'm being forced to pick one of these twin turbo or turbo engines, and I have to weigh out all the pros and cons. I normally, if I'm a Toyota person, so I would have probably picked the Tundra had they not been having these issues, but the issue has been going on for so long, and I've just seen other things that I don't like in the way they're handling it, that I can't recommend them on the powertrain end of things. I do like a lot of the other design of the interior, but that's not what I'm talking about today. Every other truck, I think, you're just kind of splitting hairs. And keep in mind, you see the sales numbers, you see the percent, the complaint ratio to the sales numbers. Keep in mind that you could buy one of these trucks and you could have no problems whatsoever. I mean, the majority of the people just drive these in warranty. They don't have any problems. You could also buy one and have the engine fail. That's kind of the luck of the draw. Kind of why I call it roulette anymore with any of these new trucks. Plenty of people have no problems and plenty of people have just tons of issues going on. So I think that's the game we're playing now. Just a higher defect rate, higher complaint rate, but there are a lot more features in these cars. So you have to expect with complexity comes more problems and probably more future problems down the road for second and third hand buyers. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. As always, thanks for watching. Till next time.